There's never a dull moment when it comes to Minnesota sports. Whether it's positive or negative.
The Yankees have swept the Twins.
Minnesota Sports Chat has you covered. Talking nothing but Minnesota sports all year long. It's time now for the soon-to-be award-winning, if only in his own mind, Minnesota Sports Chat with your host, Ross Brendel.
Well, that would be me, and we do believe this to officially be in or around edition number 240 of the soon-to-be award-winning Minnesota Sports Chat presented by Beans Coffee Company. This is the Golden Gophers Review and Preview Edition, in which we'll recap the Gophers going 1-0, we believe, in bye-week championship season, and preview a battle with number 4 ranked Penn State this Thursday at 2:30 p.m., a dentist's favorite time, 2:30 p.m. at Huntington Bank Stadium on CBS. I say number 4 ranked. That is the coaches poll on the AP. We'll find out about the college football playoff rankings for whatever those matter at some point this evening. The evening I'm referring to is Tuesday of November 19th. Mr. Daniel House from Gophers Guru and I are recording this podcast early in the morning on said Tuesday, November 19th. Mr. Daniel House, at Daniel House MN on the X Machine and gophersguru.com. Did you enjoy your Golden Gopher football bye week?
I watched a ton of football. Got caught up on a lot of stuff, studying teams and just picking up on things that are working for teams and not working for others.
I'm picking up what you're laying down. See what I did there? You're picking up. I'm picking up what you're laying down. Let's just get right into it. I can't, unless you unearth something over the last week, there's not a lot on my mind Gopher football related since the difficult loss to Rutgers. Some of the Gopher coaching staff hit the recruiting trail. Most of them actually stayed home and did some other work with the team. The head football coach of the University of Minnesota, courtesy of their YouTube page, discusses said bye week.
Very similar to the first bye week. Pretty different for the coaches, but in general, one, you got to be able to get healthy. 2 bye weeks is really beneficial for a football team, mentally, physically, and emotionally for their health. Seasons are getting longer. I think our guys did a really good job of that. And not only that, we had to get better at the things we needed to get better at with some self-scout, but it gave us a lot more time to work on Penn State as well and get a jump start on that. In terms of the recruiting piece, last bye week, we were all out recruiting. This bye week, maybe 1 or 2 guys went out here and there. But other than that, we kept everybody in the office. And I thought we had a really productive week.
House, bye week after, I'll still call it largely disgusting loss. Is that a good time for a bye week or a bad time for a bye week? Or is it solely dependent on the team?
I don't think anything like any bye week comes at a bad time unless it's like the second week of the season. But, you look at this one, I felt like they needed it. We talked about last podcast, just looking a little fatigued at times, didn't have that same physicality and strain along the line of scrimmage against Rutgers. So I want to see that improve. And I also want to see tackling consistency and the ability to have some juice in the run game to break some tackles. I think that's been something Minnesota hasn't been as good at this season. And maybe Marcus Major gets more involved. He had like 7 carries over the last 2 games. Potentially working him into the mix to complement Darius, and it won't be an easy task because Penn State's run defense is solid. So I think bye week, yes, came at a good time. Never comes at a bad time, especially when you get to November. And that's what I've been watching while studying these teams is the teams that are healthy are obviously performing better, and the ones that are more dinged up, they're down the depth chart and they're trying to hodgepodge paper mache things together. So, Minnesota, for the most part, I feel is pretty healthy. Of course, there's dings, but now can they just, use this bye week to be a little fresher, I'd say.
So the Gophers head into this week with Penn State. They're currently 7th in the conference at 4-3. They could have been as high as 5th, or would have been 5th, had they not lost to Rutgers. If you kind of look around the standings, Daniel, if the Gophers can get to 5-4, winning one of the final 2 games, it's possible they beat Penn State. I don't think they do, but it's possible. It's college football. You never know. I think they'll have a good chance to beat Wisconsin. If you get to 7-5, and let's say you're 5-4 in conference, and let's just say for argument's sake, you finish in 7th place, you could still be frustrated by maybe some meat left on the bone with a loss to Rutgers, a bad half against Iowa, a game, a woulda, coulda, shoulda game that you could have won against Michigan. But I don't know, Daniel, if I'm trying to be pie in the sky and look at it positively, if the year one of this new Big Ten, in which we were told the Gophers could never compete in the new Big Ten and they finish in the upper half of the conference, it's not first or second place, but it's still pretty good showing in year one of a new Big Ten. I guess my question to you, how important is it to find a win here in these final 2 games? And heck, both games, you want to win. I get that. But it feels pretty big to find a win here in these final 2 games, doesn't it?
Well, to catapult yourself into the next season. And you got a trophy game against Wisconsin in Madison. Wisconsin undergoing some change here with Phil Longo getting fired. And now I would guess they'll probably start pounding the rock because they've been very efficient in the run game. But, the pass game has not fit together well. They've not been able to feature their playmakers in creative ways. They've been behind the sticks a lot. The play designs aren't really sequencing together well now. Maybe they can incorporate more quick game into there, just a few designs to get Braden Locke in a better rhythm. But I'd say Minnesota, the biggest difference this year has been the quarterback play. I mean, you look at where they're at right now without Max Brosmer, I don't think their record is what it is. And it just shows you that if you don't have a good quarterback in this conference right now, I watched a lot of these teams during the bye week, multiple games. And my takeaway was if you don't have a quarterback that can compete in this conference, it's going to be a tough road for you. So that's the biggest thing that Minnesota moving forward now, after Brosmer, they're going to have Drake Lindsey, and Drake Lindsey has a lot of talent. We'll see how, he does when he gets the ball here as a starter.
We'll have a couple weeks from now, we can talk about the season as a whole and start to break it down. Although there will be a bowl game. Gophers will head somewhere with either 6 wins or as many as 8 wins. That destination to be determined here over the next 3 weeks as we get through conference championships and they determine the playoff. When you let's just look ahead very quickly to next year. I would say it's assumed 99% if PJ Fleck is back and Drake Lindsey is back that he is your starting quarterback. Is it important to maybe dip into that transfer portal, though, and try and find somebody as they did this year with Brosmer, and I'm blanking on the kid who committed for 3 days and then went somewhere else? Is it important to have another quarterback on the roster if you can find somebody that's willing to know, I'm probably not going to start, but I'll have a role on this team? Is it important to find a quarterback in the transfer portal that could step in if Lindsey struggles or doesn't look the part?
Well, they've been investing in Dylan Whitkey, who transferred last year, so I don't necessarily know if they'll take a transfer quarterback to add to the room. There'll be other transfer spots that they're really going to have to invest in. You look at defensive end, they're going to have to put some resources into that position, cornerback, maybe offensive line, wide receiver. There's a lot of different spots that they're going to have to prioritize outside of quarterback. So there's going to be some transfer portal buying going on right when the season gets done and the portal window opens. It's going to be a pivotal time. The Gophers have to do well in the transfer portal. You see these teams that find that right balance and bring in the right players, they can really put themselves in a good spot.
You heard it here first from Daniel House. Get your Dinkytown Athletes membership. Drink your NIL beer. Drink your NIL burgers at Huntington Bank Stadium. And when the pizza's on sale, go get the pizza for the NIL pot. That's the best I can do for you, Dinkytown Athletes. I made a donation a couple weeks ago when they were doing their match. I don't think my donation was a one-time donation, so I don't really think that it counts. But Look, for as much fun as you can make, we talk about this all the time, as much fun as you can make of some of the different collectives and how they fundraise money and what they do to give players money. Unfortunately or fortunately, however you view it, if you want your team to have a chance at being competitive, you need to invest in some of those things. You mentioned Penn State's defense being very solid. I have a longer answer from the head football coach on Penn State's defense. I'm going to play that. It's a little over a minute, but it gives you a pretty good idea of what he's seen and what the Gophers are going to be up against this weekend at Huntington Bank Stadium.
They're playing, 9, 10 guys on their defensive line. And it's not this. I don't mean this in a bad way, meaning that they're all the same, but you can't tell what platoon group is in because they all are good and they all have special traits. It's not just about number 11 or number 15 or the guys inside. It's not about just all of them. It's about how they can rotate guys in. This is one of the healthiest defenses we played. You look top to bottom, you look in that little injury box that we get at the beginning of the week, and there's not many of them. But they're not playing, 75 snaps a game. They're rotating and platooning, and they're not missing a beat when they're platooning these guys in. Very, very aggressive, very good tacklers. You could talk about how athletic they are and how good of a recruiting job James has done over his tenure. And he is very consistent in what he does. But what I love about watching his groups are they're really good at the small things. Yes, they have a ton of talent. But can you get that ton of talent to do the little things really well? The blocking, the tackling, the way they tackle, the situational football piece, understanding all that. And they do a really good job of that.
I don't know what to make of that other than having watched Penn State and listening to the head football coach talk. They're going to be up against it this Saturday if they get offensive line play like they did in Piscataway about a week and a half ago. I think that's the most important part, Daniel, for the Gophers to have a chance to win on Saturday or be in the game late, is that the offensive line has to protect the quarterback, but more importantly, open up rushing holes for Darius Taylor, Marcus Major, or whoever it be.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at specifically their offensive line. I think the center position is something that you can target. The interior, hitting them with some stunts and maybe trying to do some blitz game stuff that really attacks the interior of that offensive line. I've been impressed with Drew Aller, his growth between last season and this one. I'd say the biggest difference I've noticed is just the pocket presence, ability to avoid the rush, buy a little time, has some scrambling ability to pick up yards, but he's being smart about it. You look at blitz pressure. Aller's been one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten in blitz pressure. Against blitz pressure, he's got the best adjusted completion percentage, 11 TDs and 2 interceptions, been blitzed at the 6th highest rate. So I'm interested. I think it's one of these games where, the coverage resources are going to have to be dedicated to trying to take away Tyler Warren. I mean, I'm not overly impressed with the whole group of wide receivers that they have on that side of the ball. So I think, we'll talk about it in the preview piece this week, but I think there are some schematic things that they're going to have to do to really focus on Tyler Warren. I'd say Harrison Wallace is their other talented playmaker, more of a vertical stretch guy that can make plays down the field. And then you mentioned the run game. You got Allen and Singleton out of the backfield. So, they've got weapons, and Kotelnicki's so creative that, you got this formation, that formation, this motion and shift, all these different packages. I know he's going to have some stuff that Minnesota's definitely not scouted up yet.
For that preview, gophersguru.com, gophersguru.com. How many different positions will we see Warren line up as? I'm going to try and guess here. I'm just going to talk them out loud. At some point, he'll probably play Wildcat quarterback. So quarterback would be 1. Yep. He'll be a tight end. That's 2. Probably you can justify he'll be a fullback. That's 3. He'll be probably out at receiver. That's 4. Did I say running back? Maybe he would be at running back. He's going to play 5 positions. Maybe even one of the tackles. Yeah. They've done that with him. So he's going to play 5 or 6 positions, right?
He's an amazing talent. He is playing at the elite of elite levels right now.
Daniel, very quickly, to Penn State's credit, they do really fun things with him. Like, it's fun to watch Penn State play offense with him.
you watch Kotelnicki, what he's done, back at Kansas and now, here, definitely being very creative with what they do schematically. Like Minnesota's defensive eye discipline has to be like tight as tight in this game. Like tackling has to be on point. Every detail has to be perfect. You cannot turn the football over. You've got to play a clean game and maybe get a couple of takeaways. This is going to be a game where the line of scrimmage is really important too, because Tom Allen is an aggressive DC that likes to mix stuff up. You got Carter coming off the edge. You got Dennis Sutton, who's been a little bit dinged up. Sounds like he's starting to really get healthy now. And I like Zane Durant inside. I think he's a really good player. So I know that the scheme is going to be exotic. Minnesota has not played as well against these teams that like to mix up the pressure stuff, do a lot of aggressive stuff, and really challenge you on the outside. So I think the bye week, it will be interesting to see what type of adjustments are made, what type of scheme is put together. You got extra time to get ready. How are you going to use it? What are you going to implement into the offensive system?
So Penn State comes in at 9-1. They're coming off of a 49-10 stomping of the Boilermakers. The Gophers come in at 6-4. Penn State, we mentioned it, led by Drew Aller. He's thrown for over 2,200 yards, 16 TDs, and 5 interceptions. Penn State is not a turnover machine. Historically, though, Daniel, Penn State beats pretty much everybody in the Big Ten but Ohio State and Michigan. However, they do, similarly to the Gophers, every now and then, basically every year, every other year, tend to have a loss that they probably shouldn't have. So if that's going to happen this weekend, I think you kind of hit on the recipe. But aside from forcing a few turnovers and not turning the ball over themselves, what do the Gophers have to do, whether it be defensively or offensively, to around 6 o'clock on Saturday night? That game ends, maybe you're myself walking out of Huntington Bank Stadium and you have a chance to go, oh, boy, you know what? That was really cool. You just beat the number 4 team in the country. How do they do that?
Defensively, tackling has to be on point. Got to have a scheme that can really neutralize and slow down some of the things that they do with Tyler Warren, which is difficult based on what they do offensively and their variety. I would say on the other side of the ball, pass protection has to be on point. You're going to be in some spots. You're going to get a lot of stuff thrown at you, different looks, communication, IDing things up front. That's going to be very important. Minnesota did not play very well up front against Rutgers. So how do they respond in this game? And then being able to run the football. I think, like I mentioned it earlier, maybe blending the backs a little more. You got to start breaking some tackles on some runs. I mean, you look at the metrics in the last couple of games, the inability to break tackles, specifically in the run game, is something that I noted. I wrote a big piece on the website about the value of this. Those are a few variables that I would say are really important, but it's not going to be an easy task against a team that is pretty talented. I think they're pretty talented on defense. A lot of people, Tyler Warren gets all the pub, Drew Aller, what they're doing offensively, but they are a talented defense as well.
Before we take a quick look around the Big Ten, do you want to guess the ESPN matchup predictor? Daniel, you're really good at this. You claim you don't pay attention, but you almost always nail the percentage. So
I'm going to say 73.6% Penn State.
This is unbelievable. You did it again. 75% Penn State per the
Oh
ESPN
my God.
matchup predictor. Every week you're with it.
I'm over though. Well, see, here's the deal though. I will admit that I do look at win probability, not the ESPN one, but some other form of win pregame win probability. So that probably gets me in the ballpark.
But to a degree, are they all using a very similar percentage and format for how they come up with that number?
I tell you, there's a little bit of a difference based on the metrics that they're using on each website. I got one that I like that I use a lot. So.
Very quickly, looking around the Big Ten, there are some interesting matchups this weekend. Rutgers has become bowl eligible, winners of now 2 in a row. I got to believe this is going to be it for Mike Loxley at Maryland. They never do anything, and it astounds me every year. Rutgers beating Maryland last weekend. So Rutgers 6-4, Illinois 7-3. Maryland and Iowa will play each other this weekend. Northwestern and Michigan, one team's 4-6, the other's 5-5. Wisconsin and Nebraska, the winner will be bowl eligible. Both teams are 5-5. We'll see what happens there. UCLA and USC battling this upcoming weekend as well. That'll be at the Rose Bowl. Michigan State and Purdue, but the big one, Indiana and Ohio State. I think the entire country is wondering how Indiana can fare against Ohio State. You got a smirk, which leads me to believe you think Indiana will play well, perhaps even win. I'm just speaking for you. I'll let you talk. I'm going to go the other way. I don't really like Ryan Day. I think he's a dummy, but I think the talent at Ohio State is supreme. So I think Ohio State, they're favored by 13.5. I don't know if it'll be that big. Didn't like how Indiana played against Michigan, who I don't think is very good, but they've had a week off. Ohio State, you could say, also had a week off playing Purdue. I'm going to take Ohio State, and I think they'll win by double digits.
I tell you, I think people are sleeping on IU, man. Kirk Cignetti coming off a bye week. I'm telling you what, out of all the teams that I've watched this year, I don't think I've seen tighter fundamentals from offense, defense, special teams across the board. Like a team that plays in complete lockstep with details executed at the highest level. And that's why I think a connected team with really good fundamentals, playing with good detail, they're going to give themselves a chance in every single game that they play. And I really like Curtis Rourke. I think he's playing very efficient, even despite the thumb injury. He's looked like he's okay. He had that extra bye week. I love their wideout room, the balance of skill sets they have. They're able to win up front along the line of scrimmage. I thought the O-line was maybe going to be a little bit of a concern coming into the season, but Bob Osted's got that thing rocking and rolling. I am excited to watch that game. I think Indiana has a legitimate chance to pull off an upset.
So Cignetti, in closing, got his 8-year extension. That will take him into his mid-70s. Percent chance Kirk Cignetti is still coaching the Indiana Hoosiers at the age of 72.
I'm telling you, I think he wants to be there. I do. Coaching in the Big Ten, Nate?
I'm not saying he doesn't want to be there. I just don't think he's going to fulfill that contract because he'll be old as you know what by the time it ends.
Well, I think he's a football guy for life, man. I like that guy.
And if you want to learn more about him, you can Google him.
Google him, man.
That'll never not.
That's one of the greatest. That's one of the greatest.
Daniel, you've alluded to some of it, but very quickly, what's at gophersguru.com?
You can read my piece on the site about 2 variables I think are going to be key for the Gophers to close out the season. Feature on Greg Harbaugh, offensive coordinator, and then a preview of the Penn State game, a lot more on the site as well.
I'm going to have you on separately from football, and we should talk about basketball at some point, but let's just leave it there for sake of timing for both of us. That is Daniel House, MN on the X Machine. I am at the Ross Brendel. If you're watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, comment. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, however you're listening, please tell your family and friends all about Minnesota Sports Chat. I'm Ross Brendel, back again in this feed real soon.
Thanks for listening to Minnesota Sports Chat, presented by Beans Coffee Company. Use the promo code SPORTSCHAT. That's one word, Sports Chat, to save at checkout. Follow Ross on X at @TheRossBrendel. Like and subscribe to Minnesota Sports Chat wherever you get your podcasts. Rate and review kindly.